Welcome,
It is.
Priscilla.
Hi, Priscilla. Want to
Thank
make
you.
sure you're good to go on here? Yeah. Okay. I hear you. All right. I'll go ahead and begin with your introduction. Uh, I'm pleased to bring Priscilla LoForte. She brings over 15 years of experience researching, writing, training, and teaching about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility at the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. In 2024, she joined the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, otherwise known as ABC, as the equity officer and tribal liaison, where she established the department's first equity office. In this position, she has helped embed equitable practices throughout the organization, influencing both internal policies and external engagement efforts. Prior to joining ABC, she spent 2 years at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, otherwise known as Cal OES, where she helped build the agency's new Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Before entering the state, she worked as an anthropology professor since 2011 at the local community college system, where she taught courses ranging from cultural anthropology, native people in California, biological anthropology, archaeology, anthropology of gender, sex, and sexuality, and many more. Her commitment extended beyond the classroom, where she actively participated in executive committees and initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity and closing equity gaps on campus. Priscilla applies her anthropological perspective serving the people in California and is dedicated to making a positive impact in state government by prioritizing intersectional equity efforts. She additionally holds a bachelor's degree in anthropology from UC Davis, a master's degree and doctoral candidacy in anthropology from UC Riverside, and a micro credential in inclusive teaching and equitable learning from the Association of College and University Educators, ACUE. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for the invitation for ABC today. I'm going to share my screen. See it now?
It says
We
that you
see the
started screen sharing, but it's
text.
black. It says to double click to enter full screen mode.
Oh,
There it
there.
is. Perfect.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So I'm Priscilla LoForte. As Alex said, I'm the equity officer for ABC. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a middle-aged woman with brown, medium-length hair, pale skin, glasses, and a yellow jacket with a blue shirt. So it's great to be here. I'm going to give a brief introduction about ABC for folks who are maybe not familiar with the department. And then I'm going to primarily focus on what our Disability Advisory Committee in partnership with the Equity Office is doing and the results we've seen from those efforts. So I just want to make sure my volume is okay. Is everybody, was the volume okay? Okay, great. Thanks so
We
much.
can hear you fine.
Excellent. Thank you. So our mission is to provide the highest level of equitable service and public safety to the people of California through licensing alcohol, education, and enforcement. And that equity piece is really important to us in our 2025 strategic plan. Equity is identified as a key goal and pillar, and so we take it very seriously. We have, and this is our vision and values. We have four main areas of staff. We have our admin staff who support operations at our headquarters in Natomas, Sacramento area. And then we have our law and policy staff who monitor legislation, regulations, the ABC Act, and develop guidance on compliance and disciplinary actions. We have our licensing staff who process applications and renewals for alcohol licenses, and they are the public face of our department in our district offices, which we have 22 district offices across the state. Also, our public face is our sworn agents staff, and so they provide public education and outreach, but they also conduct investigations and practice enforcement activities as peace officers. So we have a disability advisory committee, and I am also a part of that committee. I'm also a member of ACSED, so it's great to be articulating with the SDAC here. We, in 2021, we had only 4 members on our Disability Advisory Committee. And that was 1 chairperson, 2 members, along with our EEO officer. But in 2026, we added 5 members. So now we have 9 total people on the committee with a new chairperson because the previous chair retired, and 7 members, as well as the EEO officer. So we have a relatively small department with around 500 employees of sworn and non-sworn employees. And so we consider this a success in increasing our participation. And we think there are several practices that helped us get to this level of participation that I'll talk about in a minute. So we're also really proud of reaching parity for our employees with disabilities at ABC. I only included measurements from 2022 onward, but prior to 2022, we were really hovering around that 12% mark, maybe 1 point up or down. But we are now past the threshold of the 16.6%, and we're really proud of that. And we think that there are several efforts that we've been doing that have helped propel us past that percentage rate. Now, this, of course, is adjusted and does not include our sworn workforce, but we're still really proud of this improvement. So what that means is we're at 106.7% of that parity benchmark. So we're really proud of that. One thing we think has helped not only our participation in the DAC, but also our parity numbers is what the Disability Advisory Committee has been doing since 2021. They have been sending out a survey to all employees to encourage them to register their disability status and or update their disability status if they had not previously done so. And important part of this communication that we have been sending out is addressing common concerns and misconceptions about that self-identification process, particularly around anonymity and confidentiality. So we wanted to make sure that employees understood that this information is not tied to their name at all, and that the individual registrations are not visible to the department in any way. And also encouraging folks to, in the survey, to fill out questions about what they're interested in learning about in terms of disability and if they have any concerns or suggestions. And so what the Disability Advisory would do when we get those results back is we would divvy out the responsibilities and create resources based on what employees want to know. Those would be things like blogs, articles, curated resources, even trainings to teach about the items that staff are wanting to know about. And we think that this has helped kind of push the culture of ABC towards more inclusive practices and better workforce climate overall. And then we would, of course, monitor to make sure that there's a lot of participation and that folks are happy with what we're doing when we're producing those resources. So it's been running every year since 2021, and we feel like this has helped our numbers. I mentioned that I'm going to talk about how the partnership between the Equity Office and the DAC is working. So there are many opportunities now for collaboration between our Equity Office and the Disability Advisory Committee. We have knowledge sharing, community building, and together we've worked to celebrate and honor Diversity and Awareness Heritage Months. So we partner together to create trainings. For example, this last April, we celebrated Autism Acceptance Month and Neurodiversity Awareness Month by the Equity Office building an interactive virtual training that provides scenario-based questions that folks could actually apply to everyday practices in the workplace to make the workplace more inclusive for people with disabilities and neurodiversity. And it also included information on mitigating ableism and implicit bias and using inclusive language, and also recognizing how ableism intersects with other forms of discrimination and how to deal with that in the workplace. So we also are planning a celebration for Disability Pride Month this year. So the DAC is partnering with the Equity Office again and our Public Affairs Office to invite employees to volunteer to share their experience working at ABC, both the rewarding aspects of their work and maybe still where we have opportunities to improve for people with disabilities. And hopefully this will create better understanding and visibility and an increased sense of safety for continuing to improve our parity and register your disability status. And then every October, just like CDA, we also participate in the National Disability Employment Awareness Month recruitment events. So we've been participating since 2023. And this is specifically geared towards candidates with disabilities. And we have had a lot of interaction at our tables with interest. And we have agents and licensing staff and EEO officer and equity officer to share strategies and tips on how to gain employment with ABC. We are a small department, so we don't really have very many positions at any one time, but there's always new things in the mix, and we always have retirements. So I encourage everyone to keep checking. And just recently, just last year, the NDEAM recruitment events expanded to Southern California, and we do have a lot of district offices in Southern California. So we were able to have representation at that event as well. And we had licensing management, our agent, and also our deputy director, Frank Robles. So that was great that he was able to attend and represent our department down in Southern California. So with all of these practices that we've been doing with our trainings, with our shout outs and our blogs and our articles and links to resources, I feel like this culture shift is happening where employees are starting and already do, probably many of them, understand that disability is a natural and valuable part of human diversity to be celebrated. And that when we make our workplace more disability inclusive, this not only benefits workers with disabilities, but it benefits everyone. So a lot of the resources that we provide for training, for resources for information on more about experiences with people with disabilities and employees with disabilities, it really centers on the curb cut effect, where things were created to make resources and workplaces more accessible for people with disabilities helps everybody. So we really hone that point in all of our trainings, and we really believe, and of course, correlation does not equal causation, but we feel like the variables are there, and this is evidence to suggest that this is making a difference in our numbers. So that is what I have for you today, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. That was a terrific presentation, Priscilla. We learned a lot from your slides. One question that somebody's asking, very inspiring, thank you. Then would our group be able to tap into the materials you have created? Meaning, I think they're looking for your slides, among other things, and they found the material you presented here is very helpful.
Is that about this presentation or the training material? Okay, yeah, sure, of course, I can share this. I'll send it to Alex and Bobby after the meeting.
And then, are the training available to other state agencies or division?
That is a great question. So the trainings that the Equity Office made for the various Heritage Months, there are internal trainings that are in our LMS. And they're specifically made for ABC interactions and workplace issues. But we do have also an LMS called Cornerstone, which I think many other state agencies have. And we also use the trainings in there that come with our Cornerstone subscription. And of course, the Equity Office vets them. Some of them are not great. So I could provide a list of the trainings in Cornerstone that I have vetted previously to the SDAC leaders, just to save you the time. But yes, the trainings that the Equity Office made, they're really for internal purposes. But I could also, provide those lists that we send out.
Yeah, any resources you provide, we'll be happy to share with our attendees and the rest of our community. Alex, you have your hand up. And Priscilla, are you done sharing the screen?
Oh, yes. Let me stop sharing.
Okay, great. Alex, go ahead. Ask your question.
Great presentation. And one of the last slides, or actually the last slide that was on the screen, is something that caught my attention, and your comment as well during it. And that's because I used to work in safety, and I liken the aspects of creating a safety culture often to that of creating a healthy disability culture in any workplace. And so I appreciate the slide and the comment about the curb cutouts, because yes, as you mentioned, oftentimes there are enough parts of able-bodied society or abled persons that are adjusted for persons with disabilities, and then it benefits everybody. And that's great. And I really appreciate when somebody points that out. So love it. I heard you mention the disability parity rate is an adjusted value and doesn't include the sworn workforce. Could you clarify what that means, please?
Yes, so CalHR doesn't allow us to report, or doesn't report on our parity rate for sworn staff. And we do have our EEO officer on the line right now if Angela Schaefer wants to chime in on that, on why that's an issue. But I believe the last number that Michelle Barney, our HR admin, had presented for the SDAC was 4% of our sworn staff. So we still do have sworn staff that have disabilities, but there is kind of this stigma associated with sworn staff reporting their disability, because it could potentially hinder their ability to perform all of their tasks on the job as sworn peace officers. But Angela, I don't know if you're still on the line, if you want to chime in on the HR reporting. Well, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I appreciate it. Thank you. If Angela, if you happen to be here and having trouble, and
She's muted. You're muted, Angela.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Priscilla, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. I don't have a whole lot more to add to what you just explained about the parity rate. CalHR does, distinguish our sworn staff. They have to go through a full background investigation, medical evaluation, everything to get that position. So it's likely that we have very few or limited numbers, or like she said, maybe there's a stigma and they don't want to disclose that information. So CalHR takes that into consideration and reduces that amount for our parity rate. I hope that provides a better explanation, but
yeah, thank you. That extra context helps to fill in the gap of why there's that difference. And so appreciate that. And then just since you're on the line, Angela,
Sure.
I saw a comment in the chat box, and it says that their agency has the same issue regarding sworn staff, and they would love to chat with you about that. So I don't know if you want to connect with them.
Yes, absolutely. Sarita, I will send you an email, and I'd be happy to chat about that.
I do have a follow-up question along the same line. ABC has a distinct regulatory and law enforcement mission. What unique hurdles or opportunities have you faced regarding disability accommodation in this setting?
That's a great question. And since Angela Schaefer is the EEO officer and in charge of all those reasonable accommodations, Angela, if you don't mind taking this one as well.
Well, sure, absolutely. Bobby, I would say they're few and far between, to be honest. And each situation is handled individually based on that employee's identified disabilities. So is a little difficult. I'd say the most hurdle would be disclosure. I feel they might feel a little reluctant to have that open conversation. But I just encourage them to speak freely with me, and if I need to mediate at all and have those conversations with the management, then I just do.
So that brings up a follow-up question along the same lines.
Sure.
And that is, what strategies and training are you deploying to create an environment where staff feel secure, self-identifying, and requesting accommodation, particularly for invisible disabilities?
Angela, I think I can address that question. That's a great question. And I think a lot of the partnership that's happening between the DAC and the Equity Office probably speaks to those efforts. So a lot of the training seeks to destigmatize disability and show the benefits and the innovation that comes from having a more diverse workforce. And so I'm hoping that the future efforts that we're doing with our Disability Pride Month and sharing real experiences from actual employees, not just, theoretical scenario-based questions with our trainings, can help facilitate that culture shift and that wanting to be proud of registering their disability status.
Thank you so much. I just have one final question. I'm going to turn it over to Alex. And that is, and I've asked this question to other speakers as well. How's your office evaluating the return to office directive, specifically through an equity lens for those who rely on telework for disability management?
Yeah, I'm also an individual who's a proponent of remote work and thinks that it can make a huge difference in terms of equity issues for not just people with disabilities, but for people who are care providers and for people who, have drop off and pick up things that they need to schedule around their work hours and just even economics, right? We know that a lot of classifications are not the highest paid classifications, and this presents huge burdens in terms of, income inequality and the price for gas and parking and traffic. So I'm hopeful that our leadership will have a very equitable and progressive approach to this return to office mandate. And I think that Angela can chime in here, that especially for employees with disabilities who have reasonable accommodations, that we will consider telework as a reasonable accommodation option. Of course. Angela, did you want to confirm that?
Yes, absolutely. I treat every request for accommodation individually as to what their needs are. But I will say that the majority of our department is working in office or in the field. So even though we've had this mandate for the 2 days, it's the majority of our department, our licensing staff and our district offices who greet the public, and also our agents who are out in the field, either educating or doing enforcement. So
absolutely. Good point.
Thank you for highlighting that you make those exceptions. In fact, part of the executive order, there is an exception specifically for reasonable accommodation for a person with disabilities that some department, in their zeal to implement return to office mandate, somehow have overlooked. And I'm not saying all of them, some of them have, as the complaints were advanced to our attention. But anyway, Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'll refrain from expanding on what you just said about the agencies that stayed silent on that part. But with regards to a question in the chat box, they are wondering if the survey that you mentioned, Priscilla, if that was a separate one that was created internally, or is it the CalHR survey?
So Angela is the EEO officer. She's also organizes the DAC, and she's the reasonable accommodation. So she wears a lot of hats in our small agency or department. So it is related to that survey with a link to the survey, I believe, but it's our own survey that we created in SurveyMonkey. Correct, Angela?
Yes, absolutely. It's very basic, has about 4 questions. Do you have a disability? Do you know somebody with a disability? Is there information that you'd like to hear more about? So it's really very basic SurveyMonkey. Just really don't want employees to feel like they have to take a lot of time to complete this. We really just want to know what they want to hear about. So very basic.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. This was a very informative presentation. So please feel free to share the slides and any other resources with us so we can share that with the larger community. Thank you.
I will do that. Thanks so much for having us.